Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Licensing and Gambling Subcommittee, which is being held on Monday, the 24th of May on 2021. This meeting is held remotely by Microsoft Teams due to the COVID restrictions. My name is Councillor Julian Simmons. I will be chairing this licensing and this meeting today. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt matters. Therefore, the images, including audio, of those individuals present or speaking will be publicly made available to all those via recording on the Council's website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. I will now carry out a roll call for those in attendance. Please can you announce yourself as present when I call out your name? Members first, please. Councillor Diane Price. I think you're on mute, Councillor Price, but I can see you. Councillor John Roberts, please.
Presennol.
Thank you, Councillor.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Can I just check if the following...
Chair, I am here. Sorry.
That's okay. No worries at all. I could see you, so that's fine. Can I just check if the following officers are here, please? Lee Morgan, Licensing Manager.
Yeah, present, Chair. Good morning.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning to you. Kath Hopkins, our Senior Licensing Officer.
Yeah, morning, Chair. Present.
Morning, Kath. Yes, thanks very much indeed. Our Legal Representative, Todd Rawson.
Morning, Chair. Present.
Morning, Chair. Todd, thank you. And Rebecca Barrett from Committee Services.
Morning, Chair.
Morning, Becca. Thank you. Can I also just check that the applicants are here as well? And that's Mr. Nathan Jenkins.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Morning to you.
Morning.
And Mr. Gareth Morris.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Yeah, present.
Morning, Mr. Morris. Thank you very much indeed. We also have local residents speaking at the meeting. Please could you announce yourself as present when I call your name? And that's Mr. Goff, please, your local resident. Mr. Goff, please.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Morning to you. Can I also welcome any other supporting officers and committee services who also are present in the background? Thank you for all confirming your attendance. Please may I remind you, the attendees, that if you do lose connection during the meeting, please can you make every effort to reconnect. Committee services are on hand and will be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. Please can I ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute until they're invited to speak. And I should remind that everyone that the chair has the discretion to remove persons from the remote meeting if that is necessary. If you wish to speak, please use the hands up function on the Microsoft Teams. We will now move to the agenda. First of all, item 1, are there any apologies of absence?
None, Chair.
No. Thank you, Rebecca. No, there's no apologies there. Number 2 is declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibilities to declare any personal and or prejudicial interests in respect to the items of business on this agenda. In accordance to the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Please use a hands up function to indicate if you have any such declarations. And I can't see any hands up yet, so just allowing a couple of seconds. No, I can't see any hands up, so that's fine. That's great. So we'll move on swiftly then to our agenda item 3, which is the Valley Tavern, 15 High Street, Fleur-de-Lis, Blackwood, NP12 3UD. Can I call you Mr. Rawson from legal, and I'll hand over to you, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Before members consider the matter before them, I'll firstly run through the procedure that we followed for this meeting. The procedure that will be followed for today is that firstly, the licensing manager will present his report. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the licensing manager regarding the information in the report. The applicant will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of the application. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and his representatives. The local resident will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of their representations. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the local resident. All parties will then have the opportunity to sum up. Please note that this should be a summary of any information that you have already presented to the committee, and no new information should be introduced at that stage. Please can I ask, if you do not clearly hear a question or response, that you ask the person speaking if they can repeat what they have said. If you lose connection, we will pause proceedings, so please make every effort to reconnect in the meantime. If you have difficulty reconnecting, please contact committee services on 07768 095 152. Once all parties have summed up, the chair will then ask all parties to leave the meeting through the hang up button or leave button on the Teams settings or screen, and the decision of the subcommittee will be circulated by the licensing department within 5 working days of this meeting. That is the procedure for the meeting. If anyone has any questions on the meeting procedures, can you please indicate now by raising your hand on the Microsoft Teams? Or Mr. Goff, if you can verbally indicate if you have any questions. I can't see any hands, Chair. Mr. Goff hasn't indicated he has any questions, so I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Legal. Appreciate that. Over to you, Mr. Lee Morgan from Licensing, please. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. Good morning to everybody. Can I first advise members of a letter that's been received, and it will help if the clerk could minute this, really. The letter is from Mrs. Hutton, one of the 2 resident objectors, and that basically asks or advises us that she's not available to attend the hearing this morning, but would like to be represented by Mr. Edgar Goff in respect of her comments and her representations. So that's a letter that we've received, and it's dated the 15th of May, received by us on the 17th. So that's that for a second. Members, if I could just make you aware that the application for your consideration and determination this morning is a premises licence variation application under the Licensing Act 2003. This relates to the Valley Tavern, which is located at 15 High Street in Fleur-de-Lys. The application is to vary the premises licence and is being made by Valley Tavern Limited, who are the premises licence holder. 1.3 of the report at page 2 sets out the nature of the application. Essentially, this is to regularise the changes to layout of the existing premises internally and to the front entrance of the premises. A new plan that is required following any changes to layout is reproduced for members at Appendix 2, and that's at page 11 of your bundle. A copy of the existing premises licence and its permissions and conditions is enclosed in your bundle and is produced for you at Appendix 3, and this is found between pages 13 through till 26. Members, as you'll be aware, as with all applications of this type, there is a 28-day consultation period for representations. Paragraph 1.51 of the report confirms that effectively there were no representation comments made by the local health board, environmental health pollution, child protection officer, local authority, the licensing authority in its role as responsible authority, and Gwent Police. During the 28 days, 2 resident objections were received, and I would confirm that Mr. Goff is present at the meeting today, and he will represent the comments of both local residents. The representations that were made are contained within your bundle and report between pages 37 through to 39. Members, a summary of the representations received is detailed at paragraph 1.6 of the report, and Mr. Goff will have an opportunity to address members later in the meeting. In the report bundle, there are some officer observations at paragraph 1.9, and as with all reports of this type, a recommendation is contained within the report that is set out at paragraph 1.10 at page 6. The officer recommendation, as you'll be aware, is just a recommendation, and members are required to determine its application after they've considered the report, the Council's licensing policy, the statutory section 182 Home Office guidance, and all representations made and presented at this meeting this morning. So, Chair, at this point, subject to any questions, I'll hand back to you in order that the applicant can make their application to you this morning. Chair, hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I appreciate that. Are there any questions? Are there any questions from licensing? Please, you could use the hands up function if there are any, please.
I ask Mr. Lee, Mr. Morgan.
Yes, of course. Go ahead, sir.
You say that there will be no problems, but I understand that you have been trying now for 2 years to get them to improve the air conditioning, so they haven't got to open the windows. Has this been resolved? I'm referring to your letter from, I think it was the 12th of last November, but during the summer of last year, when there was very restricted opening, they did actually open the windows. So could you comment on that, please?
Right, Mr. Goff. There'll be aspects that only the applicant can answer, and I'm sure that they will respond to those in due course. In relation to the I think what you're referring to is a condition of license that is placed on the current premises license, and that requires the windows and doors to be closed. Let me just go to the actual condition.
That's it, yes.
Yeah, it's basically I'll read the condition. All windows and doors to be kept closed to reduce noise impact at neighbouring properties, other than when the doors are being used for loading and unloading, and the use for entering and leaving the premises. And it says, note, this condition should not prejudice the minimum ventilation levels required for health and safety, and access to emergency exits shall not be compromised. So that is the condition that was previously attached to the premises licence. So primarily that is how the premises shall operate in accordance with that condition, save for obviously the rider that's added there about the ventilation levels required for health and safety. I can't answer your question directly as to whether air conditioning has been installed at this premises. I'll let the applicant do that for you later. But that is a condition of the license which the premises should comply. So that I will leave it at that for now, and obviously I'll let the applicant answer the question about the installation of air conditioning for you.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I've actually got Mr. Morris with his hand up. So, Mr. Morris, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just an answer to that question, really. There has been significant investment in air conditioning at the property. This was carried out over a year ago. The only thing I will say with regard to some of the windows being open, obviously during COVID and ventilation, we felt it necessary at some points to open the windows when we were indoors. This isn't normal practice. However, I think we're not in normal times, unfortunately. So there were times where we did open the windows for ventilation, and when the cleaner is, doing their cleaning procedures, The windows were open at times. But like I said, there's been significant investment in air conditioning that the windows don't need to be open for normal operating purposes, obviously outside of COVID. So I hope that answers Mr. Goff's question.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. We now move on to the representations from the applicant, Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Morris. Could I ask you just to address the committee now, if you would like, please, just to support your application? Thank you.
Hi, Chair.
Hi there. Okay, carry on, sir.
Yeah, so basically for us, I'll be totally honest, I think we were unaware that we had to put an application in to change the use or to change our license. As to what we was basically doing was trying to create more space. So we've taken away a walkway within the building and just basically taken down 2 walls. So apologies for that. We was unaware that we had to do that. Obviously we went through building control as you would for anything like that. And obviously all the work has been done and all been signed off. So I'm obviously a little bit confused as to why they would have objections to what we have done, because it has no impact whatsoever on the residents. If anything, it's going to help, because where we always had 2 entrances entering the property, we have now only got 1, and the one now is literally on the side of our building. So when people actually come out to use the smoking area, they can walk up the side of our property to the rear of the property to smoke, rather than smoke on the high street. So in my opinion, that helps, because there's one thing I was concerned about, and I think I brought up a few times, where I don't know how we could control people leaving our property and standing out on the highway smoking. So yeah, it's like I said, I'm a little bit confused as to why there would be objections to this variation.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Morris, do you want to add anything at all, or are you okay?
Yeah, I'll just add a few. I'm just picking up. I've got both the objections, representations rather, in front of me. Some of the questions sort of asked, has there been any changes whatsoever in the area covered by the beer garden? There have been some changes in that it was for outside serving. We had an increased area, so that's usually parking for people to utilise outside, which due to COVID was allowed. We didn't have to apply for a variation or whatever for that. So there has been some changes, but that is during COVID. That isn't a variation to our licence. I think Nathan addressed the disruption to the OAP housing with regard to the front door. Is actually done to try and minimise the disruption and to try and get people to go straight to the rear of our property. The smoking element, obviously the smoking area at the rear of the property. There's one here that people urinate in the alley between the Valley Tavern and the shop as it's dark there. But we have door staff and we have security team that operate on busy nights, so 3 to 4 nights a week. Obviously they have a check of the lane, but there's only so much we can do to control that. We don't know if that's people within drinking at the establishment or if that's just members of the public urinating there. We've tried to deter people from doing that by investing significantly again in security cameras. So increasing, I think when we first applied, I think it was 20 or 21 cameras. There are now 30 cameras at the property, covering all areas, to try and help with any potential crime, disorder, as part of our licensing objectives. So that's all of Mr. Goff's, I think, sort of questions answered there. Then for Mrs. Hutton, I believe it is, the air conditioning again, we've addressed. they're saying there's fighting in the streets and residents. I mean, that's certainly not on our premises. Anything that happens outside of the property, we do have door staff, as we said, to try and control those problems. Glasses and bottles left around outside, our door staff again control that by ensuring that we don't have anybody leave the premises with any open or closed alcohol. We don't serve any closed alcohol, and we don't allow them to leave the property with any open alcohol. Taxis beeping the horns outside, again, a variation of the license. No opening times have changed. It's exactly the same. We encourage taxis to be used, and we do. Our staff being the bar have got multiple numbers for taxis, as we promote the use of taxis at the premises to avoid drink driving. The police have had to attend several times in the past. The police have come to us. The majority of the time is for CCTV. We aid, the rest of the public by providing that CCTV footage to them to help with matters both inside and outside of the premises. And it says again, urinating in the side alley and the use of drugs. Again, that's completely out of our control. We've got the right to search anybody on the property. What happens outside of the property, we can't, and I don't feel it's fair to the representations to make those against Valley Tavern. That has nothing to do with Valley Tavern. The alleyway is between a shop and a pub. We deter people from urinating or certainly taking drugs there, but there's only so much we can control in that aspect. So I hope that is that's taken into account as well. And that's everything from me. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Can we move on to our representations, please, from the local resident? Mr. Goff, please, can you make your representation, please? So it's over to you. Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Thank you very much. It's going to increase the noise, obviously, in the front of the building, because at the moment, you've got 3 doors between your entertainment area and the outside. Where now you're going to have 2 doors or 1 door, because the outside door is basically permanently open when in the evenings when the security man is there. I notice you've got a stage on the outside wall to start with. So that is one concern. You're going to increase the noise in the front. Also, the door which you've now opened actually is right next to the old age pensioners buildings. And I think as Mr. Morris stated, that you've now got 1 door instead of 2. Well, normally the cafe door is locked. It used to be locked when they never use that door in the evening. So there's only 1 door there anyway. What else? I don't think Mr. Morris has actually addressed completely the air conditioning capacity. If he's saying that the air capacity, they must open the windows, well, I don't know. I know quite a bit about air conditioning. And if you open the windows, your air conditioning is useless because they are balanced with regard to the building and the room. So if you open any windows, therefore you're defeating the whole object of the air conditioning. He still didn't answer the question of, will they have to still open the windows, which is my big concern. Because they're only going to put 1 door between the outside and the bar, that door will be open on a regular basis, and also the outside door is basically permanently open when there's a security man there. The security man also he's smoking and he's dropping his cigarettes by the door anyway. I would like to draw your attention to page 34, 939. Hang on, I got to find it now. Which states, no condition added to license must be imposed at the hearing or after the hearing, sorry, agreed at the hearing. If you refer now back to page 24, that condition was added after the meeting. There was nothing in that meeting, because I was there, about opening the windows and health levels and safety levels. With regard to the entertainment stage you've got in the bar area, I refer you to page 24, Annex 3, 2. You're not supposed to put speakers anywhere near a door or windows. And the stage is right next to windows. So I would like your comments, please, on those 2 points I brought up. At the moment, you're using basically biggest part of the car park as an extension of the outside area. For the beer garden. So is this going to carry on, or are you going to go back to what you're supposed to be doing? I'd like Mr. Morris to comment on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goff, for your representation there. I do see a hand up. I was going to say, Mr. Jenkins, did you want to come in, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to answer the couple of points that Mr. Goff just made in regards to the air conditioning. When we first had the issue, when we opened the windows, we didn't have air conditioning, but we went out and spent nearly, I think it was just shy of £20,000 on an investment. We've installed air conditioning, and we have had several issues with the air conditioning. So I totally agree with what he's saying, that when the windows are open and the air conditioning's on, then it's pointless, and that is simply not the case. If the windows were ever open when we had the air conditioning installed, it was simply because either we had a problem with something leaking, or we was waiting for a maintenance guy to come out, etc., etc. Now, again, my staff base opening windows if it's really hot inside. Then they look at it as a risk and a health and safety factor. So if the window is open, that is the reason for it. And then just to go back to what I'll answer the question, if you don't mind, rather than Mr. Morris, in regards to the stage. Our setup usually, or before the work was carried out, was we had a singer that would go behind the door in the pub, and their speakers would be facing the windows. Now the way we've set it up now is that where the singer would stand now would have his back to the windows, and the speakers would be facing into the pub now, not at the windows. So again, for me personally, this is, in my opinion, then that's beneficial. The last thing that we want to do is create a noise disturbance. And one of the things I got written down in my book, but to try and help on the matter, is I'm happy to, I made inquiries on Friday about a company coming out and assessing putting an acoustic film on our windows, which would reduce any noise going through the window panes by, again, I don't quote me on the numbers, but it does save on a couple of decimal bells. But I don't think that the noise levels are going to be that great. If I'm totally honest.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Morgan, you've got your hands up, Mr. Lee Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, I think, just for members' benefit, Mr. Goff made reference to the imposition of a condition, it's in particular condition 1, shown on Annex 3, page 24. These were all conditions which were added at the initial hearing where a license was granted. So this condition has been in place since that time, since that meeting. In relation to the use of the outside area, which hasn't been covered off yet by the applicant, as a result of COVID, the government have permitted any premises which has an on-sales facility to enjoy an automatic off-sales provision until, I believe it's the 30th of September 2021. And that has been applied across the whole of the UK, and not obviously just in this authority. But that permission will come to an end at that date, unless it's changed by the government again to a greater or a different date. When that comes to an end, the premises then will have to go back to what it's allowed to provide. So the plan that is in your bundles, I think I referenced it earlier on. The existing plan is shown at page 7, and the amended plan as provided by the applicant then is identified at Appendix 2 at page 11. So at the 30th of September, unless changed, the applicant is allowed to provide alcohol on an on and off sales basis within the confines of the whole of the premises. If it on land it owns, if it doesn't own the land, obviously they shouldn't be using the area concerned. But just to clarify that point in respect of the use of the outside area. Thank you, Chair.
Can I ask Mr. Jenkins a question?
Carry on, Mr. Goff.
Can I ask Mr. Jenkins? I think
yes, of course, sir. Carry on.
You just stated about your air conditioning unit. Now, going back to when you did the first license application, you stated in that meeting, and I'm sure there are copies there with regard that people will know what you said. You stated that the air conditioning was good. You had a slight bit of a problem with something, and it would be done more or less straight away. It has now taken you, I don't know when the original date was, but I will say over 2 years to solve the problem. Now, have we got you a guarantee in this meeting that you will solve the problem? You're not going to have to open the windows, except in a really, really big emergency. And as for health and safety, you say it's getting hot. There is no upper limit on the temperature within health and safety. There is a minimum, but there is no maximum level. Is that correct? So there would be no need to open the windows, even if it was hot in there. So perhaps you could comment on that, please. Mr. Jenkins.
I've got Mr. Morris's hands up.
Right.
Sorry, Mr. So, Mr. Jenkins, did you want to say something?
Yes, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah, carry on.
So just to add to that point, he's quite correct that it's taken us a long time to get the company who installed the aircon. Basically, it's because they've gone through. We've been closed for nearly a year, so we've never used the air conditioning. So luckily, we've engaged a local company called Sub-Zero that has just done a service on our air conditioning, as we didn't need our air conditioning service because we was closed. Now that we are open, then obviously our air conditioning had to be serviced and is now working fine. Going back to the point of the outdoor space, I'm more than happy to remove the gazebo at the back because we are open back inside. But obviously, if COVID restrictions do kick back in, then as I've got members of staff to pay, etc., then we would have to reinstall it. Now, if Mr. Goff, I'm not trying to be awkward with anyone, I've got a business to run now. Now we've got the inside open back up, I'm more than happy to remove the gazebo, even though I don't need to. What I'm saying is that I got no problem in removing it, because if we got inside open, then I don't need the gazebo up outside. So I'm just trying to be as reasonable as I possibly can. As a guarantee for opening the windows, I'm sorry, if my license states that I can open a window for whatever reason, then I'm just going to follow whatever my license states. Now, I'm not going to open a window on purpose, especially if we had an artist singing. It's the last thing I think anyone wants to do, but sometimes you can't control certain individuals when they open a window on their own back, and then our staff don't know nothing about it, etc. So I'm sorry, but no, I can't say on this meeting that I can guarantee, because if it states in my license we can't open them, then we will not open them, no.
Anyway, thank you very much for your comments. And as I said, if it's a COVID restriction and you can do it, I'm quite happy for you. You know, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm only just saying that it's there. But anyway, thank you very much for your offer. But as I said, if it's necessary, I'm quite happy with that, going along, increasing your beer garden. As I said, my main concern, but I would like your comments, or not yours, but the committee, on the one which was added after the meeting, in the last meeting. I also understand, you know, you're saying about the beer garden now, as you're talking about beer gardens, that your original license was slightly wrong, that you did not own all the land that you put on your planning. Is that correct? Perhaps Mr. Jenkins would like to.
Has anybody's got an answer for that, please? I was going to say, Mr. Jenkins, you got anything to say?
I think Mr. Goff is referring to there's an area out at the rear of our property when we purchased the building, the rear property, going back to drawings. There was like a dog leg. When I purchased the building, we obviously just renewed, refurbished, whatever we needed to do. But there was an area out the back that apparently, when the previous owner moved a fence, tried to claim some land, but sold the building to myself. So we was unaware of it at the time. So we've brought it to the council's attention, and we are in the process of purchasing. It's basically, I think, is around about 6 meters long by about 3 meters wide. So yes, Mr. Goff is correct that there is an area out the back that isn't owned by us, but we are in the process of purchasing that with Caerphilly Council. We've come forward. We brought it to their attention because if you look at, it's hard to explain over this meeting because you haven't got a copy of it in front of you, but when you actually look at the building, look at the rear, you would automatically think it's one big rectangle that you own, but at the back it comes in like, as a dog leg. So there's a very, very small bit of land at the rear that we don't own. So we brought it to the council's attention, and we've had a Moose Root alley out who has put a value on the land, and we're just in the process of paying for the land as we speak.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Are there any other comments you want to make, Mr. Goff?
Yes. The land which they are buying off the council, on the map in 74, shows it as an open piece of ground. If you go back to the 1960s and 1950s, when the railway line was running along the back, that area of land was actually a cemetery which has got a consecrated ground. But the council are only using the map from 74. So I was just passing this comment about it being, it could be consecrated ground.
Okay, thank you for that.
That's it, really.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goff. That's lovely. I don't know if there's any comments you want to make at all on that, Mr. Morgan. Can you comment on that at all?
Not the consecrated ground, Chair, thank you. But going back to Mr. Goff's comment as to the condition that was added, the hearing back, and I don't have the date of the initial hearing to hand, so I do apologise, and I can perhaps try and find that. But I wonder if, Catherine, can you just try and find that date for me, please? The hearing that day, the conditions that were applied to the licence, after members, much as today, will hear all the evidence, they'll see the report, members can impose any conditions that they feel are relevant for the promotion of the licensing objectives. And the conditions that were added would have been done following that hearing, and would have formed part of the decision notice that would have been circulated at that time. So the conditions, it wasn't a case that they may have been, yes, they would have been added after everyone had finished speaking, but they would have been disseminated around the parties, which includes the applicant, the responsible authorities and residents, to advise them of the outcome. So I just wanted to clarify that is how conditions can and are able to be added to any premises licence. I'll just clarify with Catherine if she has the date.
Yeah, Catherine, I guess you got your hand up, so you've got some
Yeah.
details there for us. Thank you.
Yeah, our records show that the hearing was the 19th of February 2019.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
For that. You're right with your comments, Lee? Nothing else you want to add?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Lee. That's lovely. That's great. Well, if there are no further questions, I will now ask the parties to sum up before we retire to make our decision. This will be in the following order. There'll be licensing, other persons, and applicant to his representatives. Please can I ask you, Mr. Morgan, now to sum up, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Goff had finished with his representations before we moved on. So if you could just clarify with Mr. Goff, and I'll come in after that, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Are there any other representations you want to make, Mr. Goff, at all, or are you happy?
No, you explained why it was put in. Because, as I said, I looked at the national one, and then I couldn't understand how the national one was all written by the council. But you clarified that now. So yes, I mean, that's all I hope, that that things go as they should go as regards to noise within coming out of the building. The only thing I will comment on, up to now, you've only got one door between, or two doors basically, from the bar to the outside. Now, if you're going to keep the one door open, which happens when you've got a security man there, and somebody opens the inner door, your air conditioning system is completely null and void. And there'll be no control on it at all. Whereas before, you had two doors, so basically you had an airlock. The same as you had when you went out through the back door, you had a type of airlock. So that could keep the air conditioning system working correctly. My thing is that people are going to be, irrespective of how good you are and the way you organize things, which obviously you're getting more and more organized as the time goes on. My concern is that that inside door is going to be open more or less permanently, so your air conditioning is going to be a waste of time. So that's my only comment I would like to make at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. And Mr. Jenkins, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just to obviously answer the question for Mr. Goff. I think that the Acorn is a lot has been said about it. When, if I'm truly honest, we don't live in a hot climate country, so the Acorn is only ever used as and when. So opening doors, shutting doors, etc. If we want to keep noise to a minimum, we got to keep doors shut. They're fire doors. Everything that we are trying to do is done by the book now. I do get what Mr. Goff is saying about having the front door open with the security staff on it. That's fine. I can address that. I can make sure that the security man stands outside the door and the door is shut. That's not a problem. So I can pick that up with the security team. As to another comment he made about the security team throwing the cigarettes on the floor, again, I'll pick that up with the security team, because we use a subcontractor. They're not employed by us. We use a company. So yes, I'll definitely pick them 2 points up. But for the Acorn, I just think that we're speaking a lot about it, and it's very really used, honestly. Hence the reason why when we do go to use it, we end up having a leak on a tile or something, and it's just, me and Gareth have discussed this. We spent a lot of money on Acorn that we don't even use. But it was because we wanted to restrict people from opening windows, and we had the facility to use as and when we needed it. So I hope that answers Mr. Goff's question.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Can I hand you back then to Mr. Lee Morgan, then please, the licensing to sum up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, if I could take you back then to your consideration and determination of this application today. That will be on the basis of the information contained within the report and all the guidance that's referred to therein, and also all the information that you've heard today at the committee meeting. Obviously, there is this in essence is to determine the change of layout as a result of works to the premises, which the applicant is required to notify the licensing authority of. That has been submitted, and obviously is that matter that you are primarily looking for today in terms of your decision in respect to this variation. I would guide you back to the recommendation and showed at 110 of the report on page 6. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. That's lovely. And can I ask you, Mr. Goff, you got anything to sum up and anything you'd like to say?
No, I said all I want to say. I'd like to thank Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Morris for their replies, and hopefully everything will progress. Pardon me, just a second. Everything will progress amicably from this point on.
Thank you, Mr.
There'll be no need for any further complaints. And that's all I wish to say.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Goff. Can I just ask for the applicants to sum up, please? Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Morris?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think I know Nathan has answered most of the questions as opposed to myself, but I know that pretty much everything that was made on both representations, I think, has been addressed. The air condition obviously was one of the greatest concerns, as Nathan said. It isn't massively used. Unfortunately, we don't have many glorious days that we have to use it. However, it's been serviced and it is fully capable. One of the questions asked, is it capable for the extra capacity? Yes, it is. As per the specialist subcontractors that come in and fitted it, it is suitable. We haven't increased the sort of numbers we can have at the moment anyway because of COVID and the restricted numbers. So it's more than capable of conditioning the full area of the pub. And as Nathan has said, some of the things that were brought up today that weren't on here, such as the security staff smoking, the door being left open. Obviously this stuff will be addressed, and straight from this we have a meeting on a Monday with the security team to see how the previous week has gone and to ensure that if there's any trouble that we've addressed that and people serve bans or whatever, if needs be. So we've got a meeting with our security team today, so those points that Mr. Goff has raised will be addressed today. Other than that, like I said, I like to think that we can work amicably with the members of the public, and if there are any concerns, then our doors are open and we don't have to come to committee meetings or anything else. If there is, just pop in the pub and let us know, and we're happy to address those.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Morris. Mr. Jenkins, do you want to say anything, or are you okay?
Yeah, just thank Mr. Goff for his comments, and like I said, same as what Gareth basically said, if there are any issues, obviously if we don't know about them, I would much prefer to deal with it in the house, so we can learn from them and we can stop them from happening. At the end of the day, I've got a business to run. I can't be there all the time. I've got managers and I've got staff on site, so yeah, if it's anything that I need to improve on, then like I say, my door's always open. I'm happy to give my number to Mr. Goff if he wanted to contact me direct. That's not a problem. But like I say, at the end of the day, it's just trying to run a business. We don't want to cause any hassle for anyone.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, and thank you, Mr. Morris. Well, thank you everyone for today, attending today, and for their representations. Can I just hand back to legal, please?
Thank you, Chair. In a moment, the Chair will ask all parties to hang up and the subcommittee will retire to discuss the application and the representations that they've heard today. I will be there to offer legal advice, and the committee clerk will also be present. The decision of the subcommittee will then be circulated by the licensing department within 5 working days of this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, legal. Well, thank you all for attending today. I wish you a very good day. Please, can I just ask you to leave the meeting by using the hang-up facility on the Teams bar, and wish you well for the rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed. Good day to you.